Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to be back with another artist series on Coffee with Carlia. Today we have a phenomenal musician, percussionist, composer, and he is also a musicologist. Please welcome Marcus Grant. Woo!
What's up, Carlia? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, Marcus. So first things first, I want you to take us back and tell us, how did you get involved in music?
Um, yeah, I started playing drums when I was 5 years old, um, and I was pretty much just enthralled with the idea of playing the drums. As long as I can remember, my first playing experience was playing in church when I was 9, and then kind of did that um, ever since then, all throughout middle school and high school, and then played in college as well, in church, along with all like my regular like school things such as concert band, wind ensemble, jazz band, marching band, things like that. And I was just sort of engaged in all these different facets with music, and whether it be in school or outside of school. So church was certainly like my first lesson and of listening and learning, and kind of playing with an ensemble, and then it just sort of branched off from there to professional opportunities, and a longer career, and like you said, arranging and composing and things like that, musicology.
Wow, that's great, Marcus. A lot of the best musicians, they start in the church, and there's really no place like church because you show up and they're like, Marcus, go ahead and get on the drums. And you just have to be ready to go, showing up on time, learning the music is really a breeding ground for great artists. So your music has taken you a lot of different places. You're from Westchester, you lived in Miami, now you're going to Brown. So how would you say those different places kind of influenced your music making?
Certainly. I mean, yeah, I'm from Westchester, Pennsylvania, and then I spent a lot of time in Philadelphia as well. Like I lived in Philadelphia for undergrad, and Philadelphia in and of itself is like a pretty historical music scene. And that was such a great educational place for me to be as like a young musician, to learn um, both the craft and also the history that is Philadelphia, and to pay homage to that, both by like just going out and watching like legends play all the time, and also just to be engaged with that, with my own sort of playing, and be able to play with folks in Philadelphia. So that was like for 4 years, when I was in college, and then I moved to Miami shortly after that. Like a very different scene, and again, like a different learning experience. And that's kind of why I wanted to move to a place like Miami, since I mean, I'm a East Coast person, so I like I like being on the East Coast. But then Miami was so different culturally and musically that I just wanted to learn something else. While there was like a pretty heavy jazz scene there, there's also obviously like an Afro-Cuban scene and like a salsa scene. Um, and I wanted to just be really engaged with that. And I just appreciated a slightly different kind of study that was just going on there, whether it be, again, just, I mean, the same sort of things, like going out to see people play, but it's a whole different kind of style and a whole different culture, a whole different group of people, and music's getting together in this sort of melting pot of influence, whether it be from the Caribbean or from the diaspora, or from like the African diaspora or American, things like that. A lot of things were going on in Miami, and I was so happy to be there for 6 years to learn some more. And then moving to Providence, Rhode Island, like New England is relatively close to Philadelphia, much closer than Miami, certainly. So I was thinking, I mean, moving to the Northeast of New England, I'll be kind of familiar with it. But like Providence such a beautiful place, and it's a small city, and it's sort of nestled in between like Boston and New York as large metropolitan places, and that's kind of why I wanted to move here in the first place. But also, Providence in and of itself is such a great scene, and there's so much support for music in Providence that is is so helpful for like musicians in a place like this. Like people will just like come out and really support you, because there's, I mean, limited, not necessarily, I want to say limited as like a bad thing, but there's like a few very prominent places where people come up and like see people play, whether it be like an actual like ticketed event or just like a very casual pull up and like at like a bar and see people play. But people really support, and like you'll see the same faces, and like you'll see people, and you'll get, you know, you sort of build a relationship with folks who come and see you play. So all of that considered, like Providence is such a great place to kind of continue honing this musical kind of identity that I've built throughout my career, and I'm just really happy to have the support that is felt here, and obviously between Boston and New York, being accessible to both cities, you kind of am able to play in all those cities as well, and there's just like a different feel with each one of those, but it's just sort of you're again contributing to the history that is kind of permanent within these places, and I'm just happy to do it. But again, all these are very different. I mean, I was in different stages of my life when I was in Philadelphia. I was a child in Philadelphia, and then I moved to spent most of my 20s in Miami, and then to Providence, and just very different stages of my career musically, and also just professionally, and my studies, and like how that's changed from place to place that I've lived in. So there's been so much change, but yet there's so much growth, and like my learning has, like my orientation to music has changed over the years, and the support that I feel is in a place like this is just like so heavy. So I'm just happy to be here and ready for whatever life or whatever life has for me next.
Wow, I love that for you, Marcus. So, thinking about Miami, I love what you said about Miami because that's one of the things I miss the most, being immersed in the different cultural musics that they have there. And talking
Mhm.
about Providence, how you're such in a prime location for music and support. So, tell me about some of the musical endeavors you've been able to do since you've been there.
In Providence, man, I've been in Providence for like just over 2 years, um, which is crazy, to like maybe 2.5 years, if that. Like two, yeah, it's wild. Having, I didn't really think moving to a city, or to a city like this, like a small city, that would have as many opportunities to play and to perform, and to than I would. You would think you'd have to do this in like a place like New York, but like, I mean, since I've been here, I've with the support of places like, institutions like Brown, I've had the opportunity to present my own music at Brown University and like sort of produce concerts. Um, I've been playing with a bunch of artists here in Providence, particularly a good friend of mine, Leland Baker, and another friend of mine, also a graduate student at Brown, Kwaku Agri. And our trio has sort of played all the time in Providence, and we had the opportunity, us and our good friend Dan Liparini, who plays guitar, to play at Newport Jazz Festival this past August. We've played a bunch of shows at this local large theater, the Columbus Theater. I mean, I've also had commissions that I've been working on for different like exhibitions at Brown University, whether it be, I mean, two of which that I've done were for this the project on mass incarceration that was highlighting the music of Mumia Abu Jamal. I did the first one in September, and I have another one that's coming up in March that I'm working on now. I have my own concert that I'm producing that's performing at that Jazz and Lincoln Center in February, at Dizzy's Club and Jazz and Lincoln Center. And again, I mean, we've the trio and the quartets that I'm working with have produced records, and I've been playing with some other artists who are like not jazz, but just like kind of singer-songwriters, and I've just appreciated the sort of wealth of music that I've been able to engage with outside of my studies. Is like, this is all independent of my actual PhD studies. Like, I'm still doing that, which is its own set of opportunities too, and that's been great. Like, whether research or like going to conferences and things like that I've really appreciated. So it's just been kind of a really fast whirlwind of kind of being in the right place at the right time and just being blessed to be in the presence of such driven people, and also folks who just rock with the music and like rock with the movement and just like want to support, and we've had the opportunity to play at places like Newport or and to kind of do that kind of, it's just like that's kind of heavy, like being in Newport was wild. So again, it's been a lot within these just over 2 years.
Wow, Marcus, it sounds like you're blowing up there. You're blowing up.
Hey, listen, it's been incredible, truly.
So we talked about your music. So how did you get into musicology? Was that something you always know you wanted to do, or did you kind of discover that through being a performer?
Yeah, I had no idea what musicology was until, what is it, 24 now? Maybe it's like 5 years ago, like five or maybe less than six. Truly, like I think in 2019, 2018, I really was like, oh, this is musicology is a thing. Like I think I heard it peripherally when we were at Miami because there was a musicology program. I didn't know what it was when I was an undergrad, didn't know what it was when my first master's, and kind of heard about it in addition to, because I mean, in the programs at Miami weren't really connected. They were, but like not really. So so I kind of just heard about it, and particularly Melvin Butler was just like a person who I was interested in, both because of his well, mostly because of his playing, because he was he plays with the Brian Blade Fellowship. I'm a big Brian Blade fan, so I was like, oh, Melvin Butler's coming to Miami. This is gonna be crazy. And I realized he was coming from musicology, and I was like, what is that? And I was like, whatever. I remember thinking this so vividly. I was like, whatever he's doing, I want to do. And I just kind of checked into what he was doing, and realized that some of my music that I was writing, based in Black protest music, was an area of study within musicology and ethnomusicology. And with the guidance of Melvin Butler and David Ake and the other folks within that really incredible musicology program at Miami, was able to really kind of hone in on that. And so I started the program in 2019 for my master's in musicology, and did that. That was a great opportunity as well, both to learn and to really engage with my research as a performer and a scholar, and kind of combine those two into the study that I do now, is Black protest music, and then moving on to like doing a PhD in ethnomusicology and musicology. So my like time in musicology has been relatively short, and I'm also like, I'm a third year PhD at Brown. Like I'm still trying to figure it out on a day-to-day basis. Like I can kind of, it's I never feel like I'm 100% like I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm just like, I'm figuring it out too. You know what I'm saying? And I'm happy to have that the opportunity. But it's been really fast too, like kind of getting into musicology and realizing it was a thing, and also just realizing that I have a voice in musicology. Like that's cool. Having like the support of folks like Melvin, who you've worked with as well, and David Ake, and kind of having those folks just encourage you to continue, like you can do this, you can continue doing this, like check this stuff out, and kind of point me in the right direction. So it's been both in my research, but also in the support of mentors that's really helped me to find a place within musicology.
Well, I have a very similar story, starting with Melvin. Um,
Thanks.
yeah, and I love what you said about him supporting us and encouraging us and telling us we have a voice. Because I just went to him to talk to him about starting a gospel ensemble, and we just talked for about an hour about just different gospel artists. And he said, "You know what? Maybe you should be a musicologist." And from there, it kind of started taking independent studies with him, and him just really, anytime I have a problem, I call Melvin, and he's going to encourage me and make me feel better, and I can make it through the day. Melvin.
100%. No, I think Melvin specifically has like an ulterior motive just to get as many people in musicology as possible. Because he did the same thing. I sent him an email just to meet for coffee to talk about like the music that I was into, and we ended up just talking about musicology and like my opportunities that I was going to, apply for a PhD. And I ended up doing a second master's in musicology. Like, man, we did like Christina Smile. Like the same thing happened to Christina. Like we're all just victims of music.
He got us good. He got us really
You know,
good.
or we're just rather just, I mean, and just incredible proteges. I think, yeah, he was just really active in getting us involved in musicology, and I really appreciated that, because now it's just informs everything that I do as a performer, and you can attest to this too, as like a vocalist and as like a piano player, just as like an artist. Like we sort of use musicology as in addition to what we do professionally and what we do musically. Like it's like they both sort of engage with each other, and they inform each other as well.
That's very true. So you do a lot of work on protest music, the Black church. What would you say is the relevance of protest music today? I think sometimes people think, oh, that's something of the past. We needed that in the 60s or we needed that in the 70s. So what is protest music today? What is its relevance?
Protest music. I mean, that's such a large question, and I really appreciate you asking this because I will have to answer this question at my oral exams. But if we're being candid, I think to define protest music, it's it's so simple. It's just protest music is the most. I think it's the most real sort of expression when it comes to the human experience. Like you can protest against anything. So to say that it's in the past is to suggest that there is no problems. So like where there are going to be problems, where they're going to be either environmental or societal or cultural or racial or any sort of problems like that, as long as those issues prevail, there will be protest music. There will be sort of an outlet that artists take musically to express these things. And either engages socially or like politically, like whether it be a social movement that is sort of run independent of a political party, or that again turns into like a political movement. And all those things, you can see how music is used as a tool to communicate, as a tool to enhance the vision of the movement itself, to spread the movement throughout different countries and different continents. All those things considered, I think, just contribute to music as such a tangible outlet for problems that people face on a daily basis. And I mean, I guess the protest music that I check out is particularly like Black American protest music, but all that, it also engages with like music from throughout the African diaspora. So that is to assume that there's, protest music is within that space, like assumes a colonial mindset. So whether there's colonialism, there's going to be people fighting against colonialism, whether that be in Nigeria or South Africa or in, like all these sort of places that we know of today as a kind of like either results of colonialism or just like direct products of colonialism throughout the years. We can see that like there's also music coming out of those places that is informing these types of movements. And I think the movements are just like a result again of there being so much either thought or people just trying to figure out where they fit within the system. And I think like I said, as long as problems prevail, as long as there is oppression, as long as there is something happening, there will be people producing music in opposition to it.
That's very true. So for the listeners, what are some examples of some modern day protest music they could check out?
Oh my gosh. I mean, whether you can start anywhere. I mean, let's start like okay, so check this out. Like obviously now like we're there's a lot of protests now regarding Israel and Palestine. The music that are happening actually at the protests, like the sort of protest chants, are examples of music being used as a tool for for like unifying like a large movement. So that is an example of protest music. Musics that are like hip hop music, that is like the most heavy examples of that is everything coming out of like the Black Lives Matter movement. So like everything from like the artist Her to Toby Nwigwe and Childish Gambino and Lil Baby and all these artists who were producing music during the movement that have continued to do so, but also are just that movement is still happening whether or not it's on the news. You know what I'm saying? Or whether or not it's heavy on social media. So like those artists are still engaging with, and I'm their music still lives on. I think that music is still relevant today, since we're still like again, like I think, like you said before, like if we think about music as or protest music as irrelevant because it's not actively being talked about, I think that's such a shame, because it's to say like once like the movement sort of isn't the main thing that's on the news anymore, that the music is we don't need it anymore, and I think that's just odd, to say the least. Because again, I mean, again, like music will continue, and the context in which the music happened is still very real, even though those problems aren't necessarily in the forefront. So the musics that continue from that, and the music that stem from that, like the artists that I just stated, those are very contemporary artists. So you can still like listen to their music. Literally anything in hip hop is like is a form of protest, truly. Whether it be just like societal, like it like for me, like I'm like my mind is boggled for me to like to think of like like there's so many artists that I could just drop, but I'm just like, from those artists that I checked out, like that's enough for now. But like you'll just see sort of how that is just like a it just leads us to so many other artists that are engaging with this in a very critical way.
Thanks for answering that, because I think some people think we're like post issues, or protest isn't a real thing that needs to take place in our modern climate. So that's why I
Nah,
wanted to.
nah, that's crazy. I mean, how like truly, like how is that? I don't quite understand that, because I mean, again, it's just that's, I guess it's for people to say that like that's happening, is to say that like they're not paying attention,
Or
and
they don't want to pay attention.
yeah, you don't want to pay attention. And like what I mean, it's just we have like an election coming up, like people are going to, you know what I'm saying, like all those things are happening. um so to think of things that are going down like socially, or just like politically, or like internationally or nationally, um those things also, you can find music that is directly commentating, like just commenting on that, and working to either figure what that is, or just like spread some sort of an idea.
Very true. So I want to talk about one thing I think is very important to you. You had an extensive teaching business, um, and I'm, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you're thinking about becoming a professor and things like that. So how important is it to you to educate the next generation of musicians?
that's why I got into the musicology in the first place, for real. um I think it's so important. I mean, for the purpose of the question you just asked, I'm just like, if people are sort of missing the point as to why we need protest music, my idea and my motivation is to educate on those exact reasons. Like, why are we still engaging with this kind of a thing? Why are these ideas relevant? Why do we need to study these things? And not only am I working with musicology in a very critical way to answer those questions, but I'm also working in Africana studies to kind of for like a theoretical foundation of why we study Black protest music. And it's so important in a era when voices are being shut down at like a institutional level. Like, we can't talk about certain things in schools anymore. There's like certain topics are not just frowned upon, but there's like sanctions against it. We can't talk about race in a very critical way. In some states, like teachers can get sued, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think when we see like an attack on topics that are so critical to people's being, there should be rather a campaign to preserve that, and then also just to continue those important conversations, especially to the youth who are going to continue these ideas. So my ideas within musicology, or with ethnomusicology, or with Black music from an educational standpoint, are simply just to contribute to the conversations that will continue happening, and should continue happening. Like, because all those things are a reflection of culture, or a reflection of experiences that those stories need to continue being told. Because it's not like, for us not to talk about it is not to say that it's not happening. So like, for them to say like you can't talk about this does not mean it's not happening. So like, that's my confusion with it. And I think once we kind of realize that you can't stop a movement just by not talking about it. You can't stop these conversations by ignoring it, or by criminalizing it. Once we see a campaign against it like that, there's like, then that's to me is like a really important thing to engage with.
Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, obviously, like, because I do drum lessons, you know what I'm saying? Like, I do like, that's a very like superficial thing. Like, I love it, but like, I'm not really getting into like topics of race usually when it gets to just like learning like rudiments. But when I kind of I combine that with musicology, I can, because then I can understand like, look how this rhythm is heard in this kind of music that is talking about X, Y, and Z. You know what I'm saying? I can kind of connect the dots that way. So it's definitely contextual when it comes to my pedagogy. But it's I think that's just such an important thing. Like, I think when my first engagement with that was Philip Ewell's article on like music theory and Blackness, and I was like, this is heavy. Or like Matthew Morrison's article on Black sound, and I was like, this is a very real thing that we need to keep talking about. And I have my ideas that align with that, or that extend on that, and I just want those to continue being talked about. And I think those are just very real topics, and have very real consequences in everyday life.
Wow, that's very true. I think about undergrad, how there was just a focus on Western classical music, but when you think about, that's not even indigenous American music, or
Mhm.
things like gospel music aren't really taught. Um, just how you kind of leave that history out of the music curriculum when it's really the basis of American music.
For sure.
So I want to go to some fun things. I mean, that
Okay.
is
This
kind of
was all
fun.
fun. I mean, I'm
No, no, a little lighter, a little lighter. Okay. So tell me, who are your top 5 musical influences?
okay. Brian Blade, as a drummer, Brian Blade to me is such a heavy influence on the way that I approach the instrument. Music from like a musical level, but also just a spiritual level. Like, man's is so heavy. Um, like as a nostalgia from like my parents, like Michael Jackson.
Mm.
Truly, like that's just was the sound of my home when I was a kid. So when I was learning songs, I would just play PYT every day, and I think that was this the kind of vibe that I was into. And I just like no, I was talking to a homie like about this like last week. Like no one writes like that anymore. Like shout out to Quincy Jones. Like no one writes me like no one's producing music like that ever. Like there's no orchestra doing strings to the intro of "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" anymore. Like that's not a thing. You don't hear that anymore. So I would say like Brian Blade, Michael Jackson. Oh, dag. Nah. Because I'm gonna get dragged for this. I'm gonna get dragged. I love. It's just like in general, like right now. Like, can you give me like a little bit of a
In general.
in general? Dang, all right, okay, because it changes, but all right. So I have Michael Jackson. I have Brian Blade. Um, I'll go another drummer and say Philly Joe Jones
Okay.
in the way that I approach the instrument from like a very just traditional sound. I love that vibe. The classic records, I sort of would be remiss if I did not include those. To skip a little bit, I love Tribe Called Quest
Mm.
and the sort of rhythmic flow that is heard with Fife and Q-Tip, um, and how their music is very much a representation of the era and the generation before them. That's four.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Because the thing is, after we get in this conversation, I'm gonna think of five more and be like, I should have said such and such. But my favorite song of all time is "So Into You" by Tamia.
Oh, wow.
My favorite song of all time is like I think that's the greatest song of all time. Truly, I'm just like
I
I love
I
that
didn't
song.
see that coming. I didn't see it
Nine
coming.
Mum Hit. That's my favorite song, and it has been for like a few years now. So I gotta say that. Um, with some honorable mentions. I gotta have some honorable mentions. Like the Roots. I'm gonna give you five. Like those are my top five. I give some honorable mentions. The Roots, Herbie Hancock, um, a drummer who plays with the Jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra, Obed Calvert, um, Nina Simone, and I think this is also going to be like a complete shift. Um, all right, bet. I'm down. I'm down. I'm down. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. So those four, and then and then like Kirk Franklin.
Why did I think I thought about that? I was like, he
You know
hasn't
about
said it.
It's funny because
He,
I was watching the Tiny Desk earlier today, and I was like, yeah, I gotta, that's just so I had to put that. All right, so those are my addendums, but very important addendums.
That was very hard, Marcus.
That
Okay.
was tough. That was
Okay.
that was tough.
I like it though. It's eclectic.
Word.
Okay. Backstreet Boys or NSYNC?
Um, I don't always get them right. Like I'm just like, is this a Backstreet Boys song or NSYNC song? So if this song, I'm gonna look it up really quick. If this song, oh, I gotta go Backstreet because I Want It That Way is a beautiful song. I Want It That Way is a beautiful song. The bridge to that is heavy. There's some changes going on in the bridge to I Want It That Way. So I have to say, like, is Quit Playing Games with My Heart NSYNC? Or is that Backstreet Boys? Quit playing games with my heart. With
I think it's
my
Backstreet Boys.
That's Backstreet. Trying to tell you.
I like it. I think they're the better singers.
Word. Okay.
Okay. Okay, what is your top musical experience that you've had?
Oh man. Playing or just like or viewing.
Playing.
Hmm. I think this is one because I actually had like an out of body experience by playing this thing. So, and I had to do it again too, which is hard. So I played this past April. I produced a concert on the music of Abby Lincoln and Nina Simone, but for one of the tunes, I did Triptych from Max Roach's Freedom Now Suite, and that's such a wild tune, and it was so I just like transcended. Like when I tell you, like I don't know. There's like there's video of that performance that I haven't watched because I can't watch it because it's such an intimate place for me to go. I have to perform that again in a month, so I probably have to watch that within the next few weeks just to get myself back into that kind of place. But that was such an incredible. I don't know where I was. Couldn't answer questions about it. I don't know what happened, but I think for that reason, like it was so heavy that was such a beautiful experience. I think I've heard people tell me about it, but I haven't actually seen it. So I would say that's one of my favorite moments of my life.
Wow. I like that you went with the experience that had feeling behind it and not just like, oh, it was this big venue or it was this, but the emotion that you had. I love that. So
Completely.
tell me, what's your favorite thing to splurge on?
Oh shoot. Splurge. Oh man. It's the holidays too, so you're asking at the right time. Suits.
I figured.
I I need to splurge on suits again, but I love the feeling of putting on a nice suit. And sometimes you just gotta go and get a suit fitted and get that joint cut up and get that joint adjusted and get some, you know what I'm saying? Um, and get some tailoring done and just be like, wow, you feel good as Jax. So I would definitely splurge on a suit, definitely. Or like just like not even formal wear, just like good old suit with like a crisp white collar shirt, good old shoes. You know what I'm saying? I would definitely splurge on that.
I know what you're saying. If we could play a gospel song right now, what would it be?
Show Up by um, John P. Key.
Okay, we're gonna
I like,
play
I
that.
like I like that opening synth. The baga digga 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 dun 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 dun. That's so ingrained in my mind as a child. Like I hear that opening like little synth line. It's like I know what I was wearing when I was 3. I don't know why, but it was all the time in my head. I just have like a core memory of that song. Um, yeah, I would probably do that. But I mean, again, that's a simplification. I would probably, yeah, show up, John P. Key. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it there.
Okay, we're gonna play that a little later. So before we get out of here, Marcus, can you tell the people where can they keep up with you?
Oh, amazing. Yeah, so my website is it's like it's literally being made as we speak. So I'm finishing my website, which will be marcusgrantmusic.com. However, you can find me on social media on Instagram at Marcus_the drummer. I post a lot of my music endeavors and all of my shows on that platform. And for the time being, like that's really where I post things. I like had a Facebook, but like I don't really engage with Facebook anymore. And Twitter is confusing to me. So I think I might have to do a Twitter just because like musicology is on Twitter. But for right now, I am on Instagram at Marcus_the drummer. My music website is coming along soon. And all those things can be found right there on my Instagram.
Well, that's Marcus Grant. Thank you so much for being here this morning, Marcus. I've had a great time.
Carlia, thank you so much for asking me to do this, but it's asking such great questions, and I appreciate you having me on this interview, and I appreciate everything that you're doing scholarly musically as well. So this is great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. I'll see you soon.
Take care.